While most of the ongoing battle in Ukraine is being fought right there in the trenches, we are still watching the digital battlefield. Ukraine has deployed a host of measures to protect its cyberspace from a Russian attack. And recently, the Justice Department here in the U.S. unveiled new charges against 4 Russian officials for carrying out cyber attacks against the U.S. Cybersecurity expert Kristopher Schroeder, CEO and founder of Gray Market Labs, joining us once again. He also helped lead military communication exercises for U.S. European Command from 2011 to 2015, exercises, by the way, that Ukraine's military actually took part in. So I guess, Chris, did they learn anything from that? And let's talk about this announcement by the DOJ that covers these Russian hacks from attacks in 2012 and 2018, I believe. We're learning now for days that President Biden warned that Moscow would seek to carry out more of these attacks in retaliation to U.S. sanctions. So just give us a full brief here. What have you Ukrainians learned? Will these Russians be held accountable? And what's the next move on behalf of the DOJ?
Sure. So, I think what we're finding is that Russia's just following the standard cyber playbook. This is what's been happening for years. This is not, while it just came out and it was announced today or this week, it's not news. It is the same threats and same actions that Russia, China, and other nations have been taking to try to compromise the U.S. and our allies. So their first steps in that process is always reconnaissance. What can they find out about our systems? What can they find out about our infrastructure and the vulnerabilities? And then second is, great, they find that out. Now let's test. Let's try to get access to those systems. And then what can we plant in there? That's exactly what this announcement said this week, is they were gaining and trying to gain access to these systems and trying to do exploitation. And that exploitation doesn't have to happen now. That exploitation could happen months, weeks, or years from now. And that's the real problem with this situation, is that we have a very short-term view of war and short-term view of conflict. But this conflict has been raging for decades, and it's really now coming to the forefront with Russia's incursion into Ukraine. And Ukraine's been doing a great job with the cyber defenses and maintaining their cyber posture within Eastern Europe. But this is still, again, this is just the start and the visible start of the cyber conflict with Ukraine, Russia, and our adversaries.
All right, so let's talk about the Russian involvement that you are saying is happening as we speak. The FBI also confirmed that, saying that Russian scanning has increased. It also highlighted, schools as a target for these kinds of cyber attacks. Let's start with why schools.
Bottom line is disruption. That's the whole point of cyber, or generally the point of cyber attacks, is to disrupt life and disrupt daily life, disrupt the lives of individual citizens. That makes the government focus on those citizens and recovering from whatever those attacks are. So that's really why schools, critical infrastructure, healthcare systems are all major vulnerable sectors to cyber attacks in this type of situation.
So then what can we do about that? And in addition to U.S. businesses as well, right? Not just daily infrastructure like schools where our kids are going to, but everyday businesses. How do we make sure that they're protected amid these new threats and, recent activity?
Sure. I think the first part is for businesses to realize they are on the front lines. They are not innocent bystanders in this situation. They are part of this war, whether they want to be or not. So while they may not be part of the Ukraine conflict directly, they are part of the cyber battlefield, and they have to understand that and take steps to address the threats and the potential damages that could come to them because of cyber attacks. And the second part of that is we have to move beyond this conversation of public-private partnerships. This has to be one team in one fight and one battle against our adversaries, against Russia, and what Russia is trying to accomplish here. And so with that, there are groups that are at the intersections of industry, federal government, law enforcement. One group that's one of our customers, the National Cybersecurity Forensics and Training Alliance, is the intersection between financial services, the federal government, and law enforcement, monitoring these threats, trying to share information amongst all these sectors so they can stay ahead of, or at least in line with where these threats are going. And every organization, every business has to engage with these types of organizations to try to make sure that they're, one, your business is safe and secure, and two, if you are compromised, who can you rely on to help recover? Who can you rely on to inform of what's going on? So we can make sure that the entire nation and other sectors do not come under the same problems or same threats.
So when we talk about this DOJ investigation and just holding the Russians accountable, a lot of times general public goes, oh, it's a cyber attack, it's less serious, it's just something online, no big deal. But as you just pointed out, the seriousness that, there's a real danger and you're vulnerable when it comes to infrastructure in our cities and states. So what kind of cyber attack could actually be considered an act of war?
And unfortunately, I think some of the cyber attacks that have happened already could be considered an act of war. At the very beginning of the Ukraine conflict, Viasat, a U.S. company, was attacked, and part of their infrastructure was taken out, their satellite infrastructure, which took out internet connectivity within Eastern Europe and even Western Europe and parts of Germany. It took out some communications with energy infrastructure. That could be considered a cyber attack and an act of war. But right now, our definition of what an act of war is has not caught up with the cyber conflict. So that's where we, as a government, have to advance. We have to decide what is that line that considers an act of war against the United States. We could have already crossed that line. Many of us do believe that we've crossed that line. But what actions do we take in response to that is the problem. Because really, we've been at war, as we've said now, for over a decade in the cyberspace. This is just now the physical incursion of a country with the preparation that has already taken place on the cyber battlefront.
Chris Schroeder, always great to talk to you. Thanks, Chris.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.